There is a quiet truth people pretend not to understand, yet it governs every room they enter, every relationship they build, every allegiance they form. People do not respect you because of your goodness. They do not respect you because of your loyalty. They do not respect you because of your sacrifices. They respect you because they fear losing access to you. And the moment that fear disappears, so does their respect. This is the currency the world runs on, though most deny it. Not love, not kindness, not morality, but value combined with scarcity. The fewer parts of yourself you hand out, the more of you they protect. This is the first betrayal of human nature. Respect is never given freely. It is purchased with the threat of absence. Presence is cheap, absence is expensive, and the world pays more for what it cannot easily keep. Power begins where availability ends. Machiavelli understood this law with terrifying clarity. He watched rulers rise only to crumble, not because they were hated, nor because they were weak, but because they allowed themselves to become predictable. They walked the same paths. They gave the same favors. They offered the same access to everyone who demanded it. And slowly, their presence became common, like a torch carried in broad daylight, visible but pointless. A ruler who is always present becomes a servant to the expectations of the crowd. A ruler who creates distance becomes a myth the crowd whispers about. People don't fear the familiar. They fear the uncertain. They fear the unreachable. They fear what can vanish at any moment. And respect is always tied to that fear. The law is simple, almost unsettlingly so. People fear losing what elevates them. They protect what benefits them. They respect what stands slightly out of reach. This law applies to kings and lovers, friends and leaders, colleagues and rivals, because it is the law of human nature, not of politics. When you give too much, you collapse your own value. Not because generosity is wrong, but because excess kills desire. When something is always available, the mind stops registering its worth. This is why people walk past a flower they see every day, but would risk their life to save one on the edge of a cliff. Value is shaped by risk, and people only take care of what they believe they could lose. When you're always available, you become invisible. Not literally, but psychologically. You fade into the background of their life. Your presence becomes noise instead of signal, and they start treating you not as a person with weight, but as an endless resource. They assume you'll always answer. They assume you'll always forgive. They assume you'll always come back. And assumption kills respect faster than insult. When you lower your price, they lower their perception. People don't measure you by your intentions. They measure you by your standards. What you allow becomes who you are in their eyes. Human beings calculate worth like merchants, even in emotions. It is one of the darkest truths of psychology. They evaluate you not by what you bring to the table, but by what you withhold. Not by the size of your heart, but by the limits you impose. Your boundaries tell them exactly where to place you, because boundaries are proof of value. Limits are proof of self-respect. Distance is proof of inner strength. It is not your generosity that keeps you respected. It is your restraint. It is your silence when others demand an explanation. It is your refusal to be everywhere and everything. It is your capacity to walk away even when staying would be easier. Respect grows from the quiet awareness that you can disappear. This doesn't mean you threaten people. You simply do not make yourself dependent on their validation. You do not cling. You do not beg. You do not over-explain. Your presence remains a choice, not a plea. If they do not fear losing you, they will never fear disappointing you. And if they do not fear disappointing you, they will never respect you. It's a chain reaction. Once the fear is gone, neglect begins. Once neglect begins, value erodes. Once value erodes, disrespect becomes natural. This is why the people who mistreat you the most are often the ones who believe your loyalty is guaranteed. They treat you as if your patience is endless, as if your spirit cannot break, as if your departure is impossible. But once you withdraw, once they feel the weight of your absence, consciousness awakens. They realize how much space you filled. They realize how much energy you brought. They realize how much you held together simply by existing. And suddenly, they see you clearly for the first time. Absence sharpens awareness. Présence dulcit. Respect lives in the tension between desire and uncertainty. This truth is uncomfortable because people prefer to believe relationships are built on love, trust, or moral purity. But beneath all of that lies a raw psychological equation. If what you offer can be easily replaced, you will never be deeply valued. If your presence is predictable, your loss is powerless. If your value is obvious, people stop looking. Humans are drawn to what they cannot fully grasp. They cherish what feels rare. They protect what feels valuable. And they respect what can stand alone. This is not manipulation. It is equilibrium. Relationship, friendship, leadership all require balance. And balance begins with the right amount of distance. Think of your presence as a currency. Every moment you give someone is a coin. If you flood the market, your currency collapses. If you regulate it, its value grows. You are not meant to be conquered. You are meant to be understood. And nothing is understood without contrast, without moments of absence, distance, or silence. When you pull back, people finally see your outline. When you stop talking, they start listening. When you stop giving, they start valuing. When you stop chasing, they start fearing your absence. Not because you are punishing them, but because you have recalibrated the scale. You have reminded them you are not theirs to own. This is the Machiavellian understanding of respect. A tension between presence and possibility, between desire and doubt, between what is given and what can vanish. To be respected, you must not be common. To be valued, you must not be consumed. To be remembered, you must not be everywhere. Respect is not born from what you offer. It is born from what you choose to withhold. And in this silent negotiation of human nature, one truth stands sharper than the rest. People protect what they fear losing, and they fear losing only what refuses to be easily held. Power reveals itself most clearly in the everyday world, not in palaces or battlefields. If you want to understand Machiavelli's law, look at the modern landscape: workplaces, relationships, friendships, even online interactions. Everywhere you turn, you see the same pattern repeating itself. Value rises with scarcity, and respect follows the fear of losing what is scarce. In business, watch how people treat those who are constantly available. Their messages get answered last. Their ideas are dismissed first. Their effort becomes an expectation rather than a contribution. The employee who replies instantly is assumed to have no other priorities. The colleague who says yes to everything is treated like a tool, not an asset. Even if their skills are great, their excessive presence cheapens them. Now contrast this with the leader whose time is difficult to obtain. Someone who is not in every meeting, not always responding, not constantly lowering themselves to be included. When they enter a room, people straighten their posture. They choose their words carefully. They understand that access is limited and therefore invaluable. Every moment feels earned, not granted. Scarcity creates hierarchy. A person who manages their availability becomes a person who commands respect. They create psychological distance, and distance creates power. Machiavelli saw this in princes. You can see it today in CEOs, founders, and those whose absence carries more weight than another's presence. They hold court not through force, but through controlled separation. In relationships, the law becomes even clearer. The person who chases, who apologizes first, who forgives too easily, who stays no matter how they are treated, that person becomes predictable. Predictability breeds contempt. Their kindness becomes an obligation, their patience becomes an assumption, and their forgiveness becomes permission. People respect the partner who has standards, not the one who makes excuses. People desire the partner who has boundaries, not the one who allows unlimited access. People protect the partner whose departure would leave silence, not convenience. When someone fears losing you, they review their tone before speaking. They measure their actions before acting. They stay aware, attentive, alert. But when they believe you will always stay, no matter what they do, their respect decays, slowly at first, then rapidly. This is why relationships deteriorate not from conflict, but from certainty. Once the other person becomes convinced that your presence is guaranteed, they stop earning it. Respect dies where complacency thrives. Look at friendships. The friend who is always available, always present, always responding, instantly their presence becomes ordinary. You may appreciate them, but you rarely fear losing them. And so you take them for granted without even realizing it. They fade into the background of your social life. But the friend who is selective with their time, whose appearance feels like a rare event, that friend holds a different psychological position. Their messages carry more weight. Their opinions are remembered more clearly. Their absence is felt more strongly. The human mind values contrast. The rare stands out. The constant blends in. Scarcity is not about arrogance. It is about balance. Value cannot exist without boundaries. Respect cannot exist without the possibility of loss. Even online, this pattern thrives. The influencer who posts constantly loses mystique. They become part of the infinite scroll, ordinary, expected, ignorable. But the voice that appears sporadically, the account that speaks rarely yet with precision, the creator who doesn't flood the feed but drops meaning like a stone into still water, they command a different psychological territory. The world does not crave noise, it craves signal. Machiavelli would see modern influencers, celebrities, and thinkers, and say the same thing he said about rulers. When they are too present, they become too common, and the common man is never feared, never respected, never obeyed. Even in negotiations, this law rules every outcome. The buyer who seems desperate loses leverage. The seller who markets scarcity raises price. The job seeker who begs loses authority. The one who demonstrates they have alternatives gains it. If you can walk away, you are powerful. If you cannot, you are predictable. Humans read value through loss, not gain. They interpret worth through sacrifice, not abundance. They fear the door that might close, not the gate that never will. This is why the strong use scarcity deliberately. They know that the more you give without limit, the less people believe it is worth. They do not reveal every thought, every emotion, every intention. They let others work to understand them. They let curiosity build tension. They let their absence create reflection. The weak do the opposite. They overshare, they overcommit, they over-explain. They offer themselves without price, without limit, without strategy. They confuse availability with affection. They confuse generosity with loyalty. They confuse unconditional presence with virtue. What they create, instead, is predictability. And predictability is the enemy of respect. People say they admire kindness, but they reward boundaries. They say they crave closeness, but they chase what is distant. They say they love certainty, but they desire risk. Everything they claim contradicts everything they follow. Humans are wired to value what is not guaranteed. Look at your own life. Think of the people who made the deepest impact on your mind. They were not the ones who flooded your world. They were the ones who appeared and vanished, like a shadow that moved with purpose. They left impressions, not footprints. They spoke less, but their silence echoed longer. Loss sharpens memory. Scarcity intensifies meaning. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers never to make themselves too familiar. Familiarity dissolves the illusion of power. And power, at its core, is the management of perception, the delicate art of being close enough to influence, yet distant enough to be feared. Respect is not logical. It is emotional, and emotion responds to scarcity. People fear losing what elevates them. They protect what benefits them. They respect what stands slightly out of reach. A presence too available becomes a presence without gravity. A value too obvious becomes a value ignored. A person too present becomes a person too easy to replace. The world will not fear losing you until you show them you can be lost. Rule 1. Make your presence intentional, not automatic. Most people move through the world as if their time and attention are infinite resources, forgetting that what is abundant becomes irrelevant. When you are too accessible, you train others to believe that your presence carries no cost. They begin to think of you as someone who will always be there, someone who has nowhere else to be, someone whose company requires no effort to obtain. That is how respect begins to rot. Your presence must feel chosen, not accidental. You must appear in a way that suggests purpose, not compulsion. When you enter a room, let it feel as if something has shifted, not because you demanded attention, but because your absence had already created a silent void that your presence now fills. This is how leaders, strategists, and those with influence move, not rushing to be seen, but allowing the world to adjust rhythm when they finally appear. When your presence becomes intentional, it becomes valuable. Rule 2. Build a reputation that carries weight, even in your absence. A person who requires constant explanation, constant defense, constant reassurance, is a person who lacks authority. True influence exists, even when you are not physically present. Your name should travel ahead of you and linger behind you. Your actions should speak for you long after you have left the room. Your principles should be known before you ever articulate them. A strong reputation is like a shadow in the minds of others. It stretches farther than your physical presence and affects decisions you're not even aware of. When people alter their behavior because of what they believe you might think or do, you have achieved strategic respect. Machiavelli did not admire rulers who needed to constantly prove themselves. He admired those who created an aura so durable that their absence felt more commanding than another's presence. When your reputation functions independently of you, you have entered the realm of silent authority. Rule 3. Give less than they expect and never everything they want. People are intoxicated by mystery and bored by transparency. The more they know, the less they imagine. The more you reveal, the less they respect. When you give people unlimited access to your thoughts, emotions, availability, or vulnerabilities, you strip yourself of the one psychological advantage that sets powerful individuals apart: uncertainty. Mystery is not manipulation, it is architecture. It is the structure that holds your value. When people cannot fully predict you, they tread softly. When they cannot fully understand you, they observe more carefully. When they cannot easily obtain you, they try harder. Reserve parts of yourself. Reveal slowly. Leave gaps in the narrative. Allow questions to linger unanswered. Curiosity is a leash far stronger than force. The mind chases what it cannot fully grasp. If you want to be respected, let them wonder. Rule 4. Tie your value to standards, not to affection. Affection is unstable. It sways with moods, impulses, distractions, insecurities, and shifting loyalties. One day you are adored, the next day forgotten. But standards true, unwavering, calmly enforced standards create a stable structure around your presence. They tell people exactly how to treat you, exactly what is unacceptable, exactly where the lines are drawn. When your respect depends on how much someone likes you, you are powerless. When your respect depends on how much someone respects your standards, you are untouchable. You do not need to shout, threaten or negotiate. You simply act consistently. People may not always like the boundaries you set, but they will learn to respect them, and by extension, respect you. Standards are not meant to punish others. They are meant to define you. When your standards are clear, your worth becomes unmistakable. Rule 5. Never reward those who take you for granted. The quickest way to destroy your own value is to compensate for someone else's negligence. When people ignore you, you respond instantly. When they disrespect you, you try harder. When they pull away, you chase. When they withhold effort, you double yours. All of this does only one thing. It informs them that you are willing to be treated cheaply. Every time you reward someone for giving you less, you teach them that less is enough. But the powerful do the opposite. They reward respect with attention. They reward effort with access. They reward care with presence. And when they are taken for granted, they withdraw with calmness, not anger. Their absence is their answer. Their silence is their consequence. Respect regrows in the shadow of loss. Never allow someone to benefit from treating you poorly. This is the simplest and sharpest law of preserving value. Rule 6. Let your absence serve as judgment. You do not need to argue. You do not need to lecture. You do not need to punish. Absence does all three without raising your voice. When you withdraw from someone's life, whether temporarily or permanently, they are forced to see the space you once occupied. They feel the removal of energy, attention, stability, or presence they had quietly depended on. Absence is an X-ray. It reveals the true structure of a relationship. Those who cared will reach back. Those who used you will replace you. Those who respected you will adjust. Those who underestimated you will awaken. Let absence speak the truths words cannot. It is the purest form of consequence. Rule 7. Cultivate rarity in a world drowning in noise. The modern world rewards those who flood the stage, who scream the loudest, who display their entire life for approval. But the more people see, the less they value. The more you chase attention, the more you become dependent on it. Rarity is the final frontier of power. When you speak less, your words weigh more. When you appear less, your presence intensifies. When you choose carefully, you gain authority. Your value is not in how much you offer, but in how selectively you offer it. People do not crave what is everywhere. They crave what they cannot easily touch. To become respected, you must become rare, not by hiding, but by choosing intentionally when to appear. And now the truth settles into the mind like a slow-burning ember, the kind that doesn't flare with bright drama but sinks deeper, heating everything it touches. People do not respect what they assume will always remain within arm's reach. They may enjoy it, they may use it, they may even claim to love it, but they will not guard it. Human nature attaches reverence only to what feels fragile, uncertain, rare, or potentially lost. Respect is not born from abundance. It grows from the haunting awareness that something essential could vanish. You begin to see how everything around you is shaped by this principle. A leader who is always present becomes a leader the crowd feels entitled to. A partner who never leaves becomes a partner taken for granted. A friend who answers instantly becomes a friend whose effort goes unnoticed. This is not cruelty, it is the silent arithmetic of the mind. People do not cherish what they believe they can retrieve any time. They protect what they are afraid to lose, and they move carefully around what carries real cost. This is why those who hold power do not flood the world with their presence. They know that their value depends on their ability to stand slightly apart from the masses. They understand that silence carries more authority than noise, that distance commands more attention than constant proximity, that boundaries create more respect than open doors. Power has always belonged to those who regulate themselves with precision. They do not offer every piece of themselves to everyone. They do not explain endlessly. They do not scramble to be understood, accepted, or kept. Their worth is shaped by what they withhold, not what they display. When you understand this, you stop trying to win respect through generosity, kindness, or effort alone. You begin to realize that respect is a psychological tension, not a moral reward. It emerges in the delicate space between desire and uncertainty, between presence and absence, between what someone wants from you and what they're not entirely sure they can have. The world leans in when you stop leaning outwards. People pay attention when your silence becomes intentional. Value forms when you allow distance to sharpen the outline of your presence. There is a shift that happens deep within you when this law becomes clear. You no longer fear losing people. You fear losing your own value by giving it away too easily. You begin to act differently, not colder, but more deliberate. Not detached, but more discerning. You find yourself speaking less, observing more, choosing fewer battles, and walking away from anything that treats you like a certainty instead of a choice. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating scarcity. And with this shift, something remarkable happens. The world recalibrates its behavior around you. People who ignored you before now adjust their tone. People who dismissed you start stepping more carefully. People who underestimated you begin to calculate again. Your absence becomes more meaningful than your old presence ever was. Your silence grows louder than your explanations. Your distance becomes a form of gravity that pulls respect back into its proper place. And in this recalibration, you finally understand why Machiavelli saw fear, not terror, but the subtle fear of loss as the cornerstone of respect. It is not about domination or intimidation. It is about psychological equilibrium. It is about ensuring that your value is not swallowed by familiarity, that your identity is not eroded by overexposure, that your presence carries weight instead of obligation. The truth is not romantic, but it is liberating. People will treat you according to the cost of losing you. If the cost feels small, respect will wither. If the cost feels substantial, respect will deepen. It has always been this way. It will always be this way. The wise accept it, the powerful use it, the naive resist it and suffer. You do not need to manipulate anyone. You do not need to threaten, posture, or demand. You only need to understand your own worth and protect it with discipline. When your presence becomes a choice rather than a given, when your absence is felt rather than ignored, when your boundaries shape the way others approach you, you step into a form of power that does not need noise or force. Let the world learn to value you through distance. Let your silence sculpt your reputation. Let your restraint become the quiet architecture of your authority. Let your absence teach the lessons your words never could. And when the dust settles and the mind quiets, one law stands untouched. Respect begins the moment your absence becomes a fear.